Welcome to today's video. In today's video, we are doing the Q&A that I had asked everybody to send their questions to on Instagram a few days ago. There were a lot of responses, so I will not be able to answer everybody's questions, but I'm going to be picking the questions that I think will help the most people and were also asked the most amount of times. If you don't see your question in today's video, don't worry. A lot of the questions actually gave me some ideas for some future YouTube videos. So if it's not covered in today's video, I'll likely be making a future video about it, so you can watch out for that. I just want to say before we get started, I really appreciate everybody responding. And as always, if you do have a question, just feel free to DM me. I'm always happy to answer and start a conversation. Even if you're just looking for somebody to talk to, send me a DM. And so with that, let's just hop right into the first question and get started. So the first question is, when did I first start photography? So I first started photography maybe 3 years ago. I was studying for my Master's of International Business, and half of that degree was done in the Netherlands. I moved to Maastricht, which is a city in the south of the Netherlands, for about 6 months. And ahead of when I was going, I wanted to buy a camera to basically capture my trip, if we did any day trips, photos with my friends, that kind of thing. And I ended up buying a Nikon Z6. I'm not quite sure I would make the same decision today on camera choices, but that's the camera that I bought. And I was really bad at taking pictures at the beginning. I kind of knew my way around a camera, but not really. And I would just go out at night after school or after studying or whatever and take street photos. And at the time I would do that 3-4 times a week, just go for a walk, maybe for an hour, take some pictures around the town and try and get better. And I would post it on Instagram, and eventually people started to take notice in the city. I'd actually walk around and people would recognize that I was the one taking all the pictures of Maastricht because it was such a small town. So that was kind of funny to see because I maybe had 600 followers and they were all from this like little small town. But yeah, that's how it started. And when I moved back to Toronto, I ended up getting a job full time. So I wasn't taking too many pictures. I maybe would go out once a week on the weekends around the city just to kind of keep up with it and keep the skill. But as things started to grow and I really started to enjoy it more, there were a few jobs that came my way. I eventually got a lot more serious in it, and that's how we ended up here today. The next question is, did I go to college? And if I did, what was my major? Was it art related? I did go to university in Canada. I went to the University of Waterloo for my undergraduate, and then I went to Queen's University for my master's degree. My undergraduate was in environment and business, so that was everything about sustainable development. We learned everything about what's wrong with the world from climate change and obviously a few business fundamentals, and then I went to my international business program to kind of build on that. So I think it's art related. I think the environment side of it's probably a little bit like in the arts direction for school, but I didn't do anything creative throughout university. As growing up, I did music, but in university, I kind of left that and didn't focus on it at all. And picking up a camera was really more about like the trip I was going on than it was like a personal interest at the time. So yeah, I hope that answers that question. Next question is, do I do anything else other than photography? And the answer is yes. I have a really diverse role right now. I do get paid for photography. I also get paid to make videos, but I also have a digital marketing background and I also work on content strategy. So I work with a couple of different agencies and some freelance clients, basically helping them out with their content marketing, digital marketing, that side of things. But what I really like to do is shoot and make content right now. So I like this question, and it's, other than Toronto, what other city do you want to take photos in? And it can be anywhere in the world. Honestly, somewhere I would really want to go right now is Hong Kong. I've always wanted to go there. There's a few photos that I remember when I was first starting out that I really wanted to capture. It's still on the bucket list, but I really don't think it's gonna happen anytime in the near future. Pre-pandemic, I was really trying to go to Japan. I always wanted to go to Tokyo as well. Do I see myself going to any of those places in like the next 6 months? I'm not quite sure, but if I were to pick somewhere that I think is like feasible to actually go back to in the next 6 months, I'd go back to New York and really just have at it with street photography, because at the time when I went, I didn't really understand street all that much. And I think right now I'd be able to get a lot more photos that I'd be more proud to share with everybody. Next question is, what excites me most about cityscapes and street photography? I've actually been thinking about this a little bit, especially just looking through my photos and figuring out what it is that I'm trying to capture. And one of the things that I always have said since I started is that I'm always trying to capture like a mood or a feeling, especially in the little small town in the Netherlands that I lived in when I was first starting. There wasn't all that much going on, but there's a certain feeling that you get in those cities at like blue hour, or they're in a market, or there's just like some sort of atmosphere. And I try to like capture the feeling that I get in that moment with my photography. And so that can kind of come with like a person picking something up at the market, or maybe it's a building in that area that kind of has some sort of mood to it because like the sun's going down and the lights are on, and that's really what I'm looking for in my photos. A lot of the times it doesn't work out, mostly from trial and error, and you can never really get the perfect photo, but that's what excites me the most, is like finding what's happening on that little alleyway or corner or area that you're in and making a photo that actually like represents what you're looking at or what you're feeling. So this one's pretty funny because I made a joke about it, and I think a lot of people are surprised. I got a lot saying, "Are you really 25?" And yes, the answer is I am 25. I think I give off a little bit of like an older vibe than 25, but no, I'm 25 years old, and we'll see what I look like and act like when I'm 30. Next question is, what are typical settings that I have on my camera for street photography? So this is an interesting question because I kind of shoot differently than I think most people will. Number one, I always try to keep my shutter at 1/100th of a second. You could probably bring it down to 1/60, but I find I'm moving a lot of the times when I'm taking a photo, so I need that little extra shutter to keep things sharp. Next one is f2.8 on my aperture because I typically am shooting at blue hour, so there's not all that much light when I'm out. I do lose detail in the buildings, but I make it up for getting photos that have a lot more depth in them. So that's what I'm trying to look for. And then I'll leave my ISO on auto just because the light's constantly changing as I'm walking around the city. So I'm not too particular about how it looks. I know how to knock out noise for work on Instagram and sharing it on social media. So you can't really tell all that too much, but if I'm shooting like an actual project, I'm always picking my own ISO, and I'm also using manual white balance, I'd say like 80–70% of the time. All right, next question. How often do I go out to take street photos? I think when you're a street photographer, it's kind of like an impression that you might be going out and taking a new photo every single day. What I would say is it really ebbs and flows for me. I'll go out and do street photography maybe one time a week if the weather's super cold out or I'm really busy. Other times I might go out 3–4 times a week to take photos because I'm already downtown in the first place. I have some spare time before I need to go home. Like there's certain things, and so I'll just try and take advantage of that extra time. So it really just depends. Lately though, I've been having a lot of fun in the mornings because a lot of the buildings in the financial district have actually started to fill up. So you can get some cool photos of people in suits and with umbrellas and that kind of thing. That's so like stereotypical of street photography, but that's what I'm looking for 90% of the time lately. Before I would go a lot of the time at sunset, but I wake up so early that it kind of makes it tough to like go the whole day to go take street photos at night, and I'm just really, really tired, and I find I'm less creative in the evenings. So I hope that answers that question. All right, next question is, how did I find my editing style? This is something that really just comes with practice. I think a lot of the times you get kind of sucked into this idea that like you have to have a look, you have to have a way that like you present your work on social media. What I would say is like when you're first starting out on social media, edit however you want, post whatever you want, and just figure out what it is you like the most. Don't worry what's getting the most likes in the moment. What gets the most likes at like 700 followers if you edit blue is going to be very different than if you had like 60,000 followers and you have like a wider array of people selecting what photos they actually enjoy. So it's really important to edit that's actually like true to yourself in that sense to start off with. As far as style from compositionally speaking, there's definitely certain compositions that I'm attracted to. There's definitely certain subjects that I like to take pictures of. And it's pretty clear on my feed that like I have a certain editing look, but I like to change it up and move it around based on what's happening. In Toronto, the seasons move so quickly. Summer's like 3 months, winter, it feels like forever. Spring, it's maybe like 2–3 months. And with each season, comes different lighting conditions, comes different subjects on the streets, comes different like environmental factors like snow on the ground or just a lot of rain. And so like in each of these environments, it's not consistent throughout the year. And you'll see that on my feed. I might be editing blue right now, but at one point I had like a gray brown look. Another time I used a lot of oranges for when it's fall. And so like it's constantly iterating, but I will say that like I have a certain workflow when I edit and I try to achieve a certain look. I bring down my whites, I fade my blacks, I sometimes fade my whites, I add a lot of color in the shadows. Like there's certain things that I do. And it really just came with practice and figuring out what settings I like. Now I will say that because of the pandemic, I'm a little abnormal in the sense that like I've exclusively shot in Toronto because I haven't been able to travel anywhere. And different cities give off different conditions for your photo editing. They all have different lighting situations that you have to take into account for what your end photos are actually going to look at. There's different color casts in different cities. There's different street lights that are used. For example, in Toronto, there are a ton of really warm street lights. But in London, they're a lot cooler. You'll see photographers in London have a whole different look to their photos because their lighting that is on their streets is very different than Toronto. Our city streets at night are orange. This extremely warm light. So then to cool that down in post-production and make it blue changes the entire image. And those are the things that you kind of have to grip with. So I would say like the way I'm editing right now is probably very exclusive to the conditions that I'm dealing with in Toronto. It's a very gray city and it looks best in bad weather. And so that naturally dictates what photos that I'm gonna shoot because that's like what I'm trying to express in the moment. I'm actually very curious to see like if I went to New York right now, what my photos would look like. I think I would be able to actually bring out a lot more color and use a lot more dynamic lighting, especially with like punchier shadows and maybe even brighter whites and stuff like that. So we'll see how it changes, but I hope that answers your question. What lenses have I used in the past and what do I like the most? I've really used the Holy Trinity exclusively. So that's 16 to 35 f2.8, 24 to 70 f2.8, and 70 to 200 f2.8. If I had to pick one out of the three, I would pick the 70 to 200. Every single time, the look that you get from it, how versatile it is, it's really, really, really a great lens for a lot of situations, and it also has a really unique look. That said though, if you're looking for a lens that can do everything, the 24 to 70s should be your pick. If you're looking for one lens to get, if you're like on a budget or something like that. One lens that I do want to pick up in the next like 3-4 months is an 85 f1.4. That's a lens that I've always wanted, especially because I'm shooting more portraits now. I really think that that's gonna help me really express my style better. All right, the final question that I wanted to share is that, am I a lazy editor? I actually had to ask this person what it meant. And a few people asked similar questions about editing. And it's basically like, are you afraid to edit your photos after you take them? Or do you even enjoy editing your photos after you take them? And the answer is like, it depends. My photos, I really take into consideration when I come back from a shoot specifically that I'm getting paid to do. I'm always curious how the end product looks. I will upload my photos right away and take a look, make sure everything's good. I can sleep easy at night knowing that we got what we needed to, the shot list is done, the client's gonna be happy, all of that's good to go. But for my own photos, I'm always like a little hesitant. Usually I'll let it sit for a day, maybe a day and a half before I take a look at them, just so that I can feel good about the day in of itself. Like if I'm going on a trip or, you know, taking some photos on the street, I won't really look at them after I've taken the photos. I just think it's good to separate yourself from however the day went and then to look at the photos and really take an objective look at editing them. You might find a different way to edit than you initially thought when you were taking the photos. So that's why I don't really approach it right away. That said, I'm not too particular about editing or shooting or having a choice between the two. I kind of just do both and figure it's all a part of the same process. So that is it for today's video. I feel like this is gonna be a little bit of a long Q&A, but I wanted to make it a little bit more rapid fire. Again, there were some questions that I didn't get to today, so we can definitely do this again. If you're curious, I'll always be open to answering questions, collecting them, and explaining anything that you wanna know. So really appreciate you watching. The support has been amazing lately. So with that, I hope to see you all in the next one. Thanks for watching.